What would you do if a baby's cry didn't sound like a cry at all, but like a siren no one else could hear? The sound began as a thin thread and pulled tighter, tighter, until it cut through the marble hush of the mansion and hummed in the bones of the girl, mopping the same glossy square of floor for the fourth time. 3 hours the cry had gone on. 3 hours of a desperate little voice echoing up the mahogany stairs and down past doors that were always closed. Esperanza Morales, 24, with work-hardened hands and eyes that hadn't learned how to stop hoping, pressed the damp cloth flat and stilled. Her chest ached the way it had every morning for 6 weeks, a throbbing fullness that felt like grief made physical. That cry scratched somewhere too raw inside her. Somewhere she'd wanted to board up forever. He's going to hurt himself from crying this long, she thought, and the thought frightened her because it felt like memory, like déjà vu wearing the face of now. Upstairs, in a nursery the size of the little room she rented 10 times over, a 2-month-old baby named Sebastian had cried himself red. His lips were dry, his mouth made tiny searching shapes, then gave up and sobbed again. The bottle lying beside the crib smelled sour. The milk had curdled under the heavy heat of afternoon. The nanny, Camila Ruiz, had vanished 6 hours ago. She'd said she'd run to the pharmacy. She'd said it with the breezy confidence of a person who knows they'll never be questioned in a house like this. She had gone to the mall to meet her friends. The day was too bright and her time, in her mind, too expensive to waste on a baby's needs. Downstairs, behind a thick door, Rafael Mendoza sat in his office, blue light lapping at his tired face. He was 32 and carried a permanent shadow beneath his eyes. On screen, a business meeting in another time zone droned on, voices trading numbers. "Mr. Mendoza, will you confirm the commitment?" a polite voice asked in accented English. "Yes," he said automatically, eyes locked on a framed photograph of a smiling woman named Valentina. "You can count on us." Upstairs, the baby's cry thinned, weak, dangerous. The mop slipped from Esperanza's fingers and slapped the tile. She moved before she had time to choose to move, past the gilt-edged mirror that always made her look like a ghost in someone else's house, and up the wide, dark stairs 2 at a time. "Please let nothing have happened." She whispered the words so low they were more breath than prayer. The door to the nursery pushed open, and the heat in the room met her. Sebastian lay exhausted in the crib, eyes half closed, skin hot under a sheen of sweat. His mouth made those small, lost movements again, as if somewhere in the air was an answer he couldn't find. "Holy Mother," she breathed, and the words were not pretty but pleading. She lifted him, and the weight of him was less than it should have been. He was so warm, so thirsty. "Shh, little one." "I'm here," she said, and when she lifted the bottle and sniffed it, a line of disgust cut across her face. Rot, waste, neglect that wasn't meant to be neglect, but was just the same. He rooted against her arm, frantic. Somewhere under the ache in her chest, something burst the dam she'd built to hold back everything since the hospital room, and the 2 bright lights, and the doctor who had said, "We waited too long." 6 weeks ago, she lost her infant son, and her body had not gotten the message to stop making what he would forever need. Sebastian's tiny mouth searched. The room swayed. The world narrowed to the sound of his breath and the crush of that long, long cry. Before she could count the cost to her job, her future, her heart, she sat, cradled him against her, and offered the only thing left inside her that could save anyone. His cry stopped mid-breath. He latched as if he had been falling and had finally found a hand. Relief rolled off him in waves. Relief rolled through her, too, a dangerous, holy quiet that began in her chest and spread outward. For the first time in 6 weeks, her body felt like something good again. "There now," she whispered. "There now." Downstairs, the meeting ended. Raphael's voice was steady as he said goodbye, and when he clicked the call off, the silence hit him, a silence that felt like a dropped glass. The crying had stopped. He stood too fast, his chair scraping the floor, and climbed the stairs with a cautious dread. The nursery door stood open. Afternoon light softened itself through the curtains, turning the air into honey. He stepped inside and froze. In the armchair by the window, Esperanza held his son to her chest the way a mother does when she is a harbor and the ship is small. Sebastian's face was damp but peaceful. The room smelled like warmth and skin and the sweetness of milk, not the sour tang of waste. Raphael's mind splintered. Shock, confusion, a shape he didn't have a name for. What is happening? What is happening here? He didn't recognize the sound he made when he said, "What? What are you doing?" Esperanza flinched. She pulled her blouse closed with one hand and kept the baby steady with the other. "Sir, please, let me explain." He took 2 unsteady steps closer, anger waking slow and jagged under his grief. "Explain what? Have you lost your mind?" He was dehydrated. The bottle was spoiled, or in the nanny she left. He was suffering. The words tumbled. Panic made them clumsy. Esperanza's eyes filled and held. "I couldn't just stand there." Raphael looked down at his son, really looked, and something in him loosened and bled. Sebastian slept. Calm. Not the tight, fretful sleep that came with exhaustion, but a soft peace that Raphael hadn't seen since the day in the hospital, when Valentina's hand had grown limp in his and the nurses had stopped saying, "We're trying." "How is he so quiet?" "Chirchuri," he asked, and his voice didn't belong to the man who closed deals and signed things and made hard choices. "He was starving," Esperanza said, her voice breaking on the word. I still have milk." The silence went heavy, the kind of heavy that turns a room into a courtroom. "I lost my baby 6 weeks ago," she said, eyes dropping as if the floor could bear the shame better than he could. "I still have milk, but no baby." The blow landed squarely under Raphael's ribs. He knew grief. He lived with it like a housemaid who never moved out. For a heartbeat, he saw 2 women, the one in the photo frame and the one in front of him. Both wrapped around children in different rooms, different summers, different endings. He rubbed a shaking hand over his face. "Go home, Esperanza. We'll talk tomorrow." She passed his son back to him as if passing a fragile, priceless thing. "Don't let him go hungry again," she said, and her voice had no accusation in it, only frightened care. When she reached the door, she looked back once. Raphael stood holding his sleeping boy, his face soft in a way she had not seen. For a minute, the house didn't feel like a machine, but like a place people might live. Night fell. The front door sighed. Shoes scuffed in the entry. Camilla breezed in with a bag from a boutique and a lie she'd practiced into a smile. "I bought the special formula," she said, and then her eyes flicked over the room and took in what had changed. The quiet, the sleeping baby, the way Raphael was looking at nothing. "Oh," she added lamely, "that's good." He didn't answer. That night, Sebastian woke only once. He took the bottle without a fight and fell back asleep with a small sigh that stitched itself into the silence like a prayer. For Camilla, who had built a career on the fact that the rich often confuse presence with care, it should have been a relief. It was not. She felt something shifting, something that threatened her comfort. Morning brought coffee and the small soft sounds of a baby waking. Esperanza moved quietly in the kitchen, cleaning up last night's dishes. Camilla was already at the stove, making a show of being busy. Doña Carmen, the cook, and the heart that had kept so many rooms warm, set a plate down and clucked like a mother hen. "Poor girl," she said with a sigh. "Yesterday shook you." "Why?" Camilla asked, careful, curious. "The child she lost," Carmen said. "So recent." Camilla pretended to be shocked while something leaden and ugly stirred in her gut. "Lost her? Did her husband stay?" "Left," Carmen said sadly. "Blamed her for what the doctors did wrong." In Camilla's head, gears turned. She saw a path that had nothing to do with truth and everything to do with survival. "Can I tell you something?" she asked, lowering her voice. But please, don't say it came from me. Carmen, who came from women who kept kitchens and kept secrets, nodded. Yesterday, I saw something strange. Camilla leaned in. She was nursing the baby. Carmen's hand flew to her mouth. No. Yes, with her own milk, Camilla said, and she stares at him for hours, like she's confused. Maybe she wanted to help, Carmen offered, loyal to a fault. Mujer who loses a child, Camilla murmured, letting the sentence trail off in implication. You know how it is. Obsession. She left Carmen with that seed and went looking for better soil. She called Patricia Montalvo, the queen of neighborhood whispers, the woman whose smile never reached her eyes. Patricia, querida, she said sweetly, are you sitting down? By 11, the phone had started. First Patricia, then Raphael's mother-in-law, then Valentina's best friend, each call packaged as concern, tied in a ribbon of judgment. You need to be careful. This could smear Valentina's memory. A woman like that, unstable, grieving, she could get attached. You're vulnerable. Someone might take advantage. Sheriff, even with every call, Raphael's chest cinched tighter. With every voice, the house felt less like his and more like a stage where he was being watched. He looked at his son, laughing for the first time in weeks when Esperanza peeked around the doorframe, lit up like a tiny star, and Raphael's heart warred with his head. The noise of other people's certainty grew louder than the small voice inside him that said, this is good. By noon, the echo chamber won. We need to talk, he told Esperanza in a voice he reserved for the boardroom. She knew what was coming by the way he put the desk between them. She sat on the edge of a chair as if it might throw her. Did I do something wrong? She asked. This isn't about right or wrong, he lied. People are talking. He said the next part like it hurt to move his tongue. They say you're taking advantage, that you lost your baby and now you're trying to replace him. All the color left her face. Sir, that's not true. I would never. You fed my son without asking me. He was getting weaker every minute. I was the only one there. She stood, hands shaking. He needs me because I calm him down. I make him happy. That's all. He didn't know how to say the thing he didn't believe, but had to say. You're getting too attached. And I can't risk a scandal. You're dismissed. Silence threw its blanket over the room. Please don't, she whispered. Please. I don't have anywhere to go. Collect your things, he said to the bookshelf because he couldn't bear her eyes. And go. At least let me say goodbye to Sebastian. No, he snapped and hated himself for how sharp it came out. It's better if you go now. She left the office moving like a person who had just been pushed into cold water. In the kitchen, she packed the few things that were hers while Carmen wept angry, useless tears. They're wrong, Carmen said. You saved him. It doesn't matter, Esperanza answered, voice hollow. I have to go. Outside, the sky broke open. Rain came down like punishment. From the office window, Raphael watched her walk slowly down the sidewalk, a plastic bag of belongings pressed to her chest, her shirt clinging in the downpour. His legs twitched with the urge to run after her. Then Patricia texted him, You did the right thing. As if rightness were not killing something he couldn't name. Upstairs, Sebastian cried. The house learned a new kind of night. The kind where a baby screamed until the sound blurred, until sleep was not rest but collapse. Raphael rocked, walked, begged. Sebastian arched away from his arms. The bottle he had gulped so easily 2 nights ago was now a fight. The toys didn't distract. Nothing did. Camilla said, Babies have phases, and tried not to look relieved that the blissful quiet was over. Raphael hired a temporary nanny named Sonia, who walked in boasting 2 decades of experience. 2 hours later, she handed Sebastian back, shaking her head. I've never seen a baby this agitated, she said. He hired Carla next. She spoke softly and moved carefully and built tiny routines as if they could heal. This is trauma, she said. He's lost a bond. What bond? Raphael asked, and the answer rose and choked him. He swallowed it. There's no one. The third nanny, Marcia, best reviewed in the city, lasted 3 days. "Mr. Mendoza," she said, eyes kind but firm, "this baby is declining. He needs medical attention." The pediatrician, Dr. Villanueva, examined Sebastian and looked grave. "Physically, he is not ill, but he is losing weight, dehydrating. Babies can fade because they feel unsafe. They can refuse what they need. It's not logical, it's attachment." Raphael thought of how small his son had looked in Esperanza's arms. He thought of the way the baby had smiled when she sang. "What can we do?" "We need to stabilize him," the doctor said. "If he does not improve, I will admit him." The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Machines hummed. Nurses came and went, all assurance and bruised compassion. Dr. Villanueva said quietly, "He needs an emotional spark, a reason to reach for life again." Raphael went home to grab a change of clothes. He stepped into the garden just as a voice, lazy and unfamiliar, drifted over the hedge. "This one is imported," the voice said. "Worth 300,000 pesos. He moved to the window and looked out. Camilla stood under the shade, a box of baby medicines open like a treasure chest. A man in a cheap jacket counted cash. Raphael was down the stairs and out the door before he knew he'd left his office. "What the hell are you doing?" Camilla jumped and nearly dropped a bottle. "Senor, what a scare!" "You're selling my son's medication," he said, and his voice was thinner than he wanted it to be. The buyer shrugged. "She always sells baby meds here. I resell to a pharmacy." "How long?" Raphael asked, dangerously calm. She backpedaled. "I can explain. My mother, she's sick." "Where were you when my son cried alone for hours?" he demanded. "Where did you go?" "I was here," she lied, and even she couldn't bear the sound of it. Pressed to the wall, she reached for another lie and found the one she'd planted that had grown so fast it strangled the truth. "If that cleaning girl hadn't interfered—" "How?" he cut in. "Interfered how?" She hesitated, then crumbled. "I made it up." Her shoulders dropped, hunching under a shame that was almost relief. "I lied. I was afraid she'd make me look bad. She did everything better than me. She saved him, and I was afraid." "Get out," Raphael said, and the words came out like the snap of a spine. "Get out now." Raphael stood in the stunned quiet of his garden after Camilla's footsteps faded, after the gate clicked. He felt the truth settle like a weight. She lost her baby and saved mine, he thought, and I threw her out like trash. He called Carmen. "Do you know where Esperanza might be?" Carmen had already tried. "No one," she said. "No family. No friends who can take her in. She had only this." He tried the address on her employment form, but the building had been emptied and was being torn down. He tried shelters, social services, police. He printed the grainy security camera image of her face and carried it like a question from block to block. "Have you seen this woman?" People squinted and looked away. "Senor, we see so many," a volunteer said kindly. "They come and go." Raphael learned the city in a week. He learned which squares were safe in daylight and dangerous after dusk. He learned the smell of human fear in the narrow alleys where too many stories had ended. He learned to ask questions humbly. He also learned he had never looked at poor people as people before. It made him hate the man he had been. On the 8th day, his phone rang. "Senor Mendoza?" a gravelly voice asked. "This is Esteban. Folks on the street say you've been looking for someone." "I have," Raphael said. "Please, do you know where she is?" "Maybe," Esteban said. "But first you need to tell me why." "I don't hand my people over to wolves." "Because I made the biggest mistake of my life," Raphael said, and his voice shook. "Because my son is in the hospital and fading, and he smiled only when she was there. Because she saved him, and I punished her for it. Because I want to help her if she'll let me and ask forgiveness if she won't." On the other end of the line, silence stretched. He heard traffic, the thoughtful scratch of a beard. "If you hurt her again, I'll know," Esteban said finally. "Under the Caracas Avenue Bridge. Far corner near the fence." Under the bridge, it was always twilight. A half-dozen people had made a home out of concrete and cardboard. Someone had painted a flower on the pillar, a stubborn burst of color against gray. Raphael recognized Esteban by the dignity in his posture. The old man nodded once and pointed to a tent. Inside, on a thin mattress, Esperanza lay sweating. Fever had made her eyes glassy and her cheeks too bright. Her hair was matted, her lips cracked. The curve of her collarbones looked fragile as porcelain. "Esperanza," Raphael said, and he had to kneel because his legs didn't want to hold him. She blinked, confused, then focused and flinched. "You're here," she whispered. Her voice sounded like sandpaper. "Why?" "Because Sebastian needs you," he answered. "He's in the hospital. He's not eating. He's bad." The words scared the wind out of her. She tried to sit up and coughed until her whole body shook. Esteban stepped in with a cup of water. "She's sick," he said. "Lungs." "Come with me," Raphael begged. "We'll get you to a doctor." "No," she said, not because she wasn't afraid of dying, but because trust had become an enemy that looked like kindness. "You'll throw me out again when they start talking." "That won't happen," he said, and hated that he had nothing to prove it with but his empty hands. "I give you my word." "Your word," she said tiredly. "You already gave me that once." "If you stay here, you could die," he said softly. "And if you don't come, my son might." Esteban touched her shoulder. "Mejia," he murmured, "let them help you. We can't lose you like this." She closed her eyes as if she could sleep her way into a world where there were no impossible choices. When she opened them, she nodded. "I'm not coming back for you," she told Raphael. "Only for him." "That's enough," he said. At the hospital, doctors took her in with efficient hands. "Bacterial pneumonia," Dr. Villanueva said after a flurry of tests. "Severe malnutrition, dehydration. We'll admit her. We'll treat aggressively." "Can she see Sebastian?" Raphael asked. "When she's no longer infectious?" The doctor said. "Not a minute sooner." 3 days later, the fever broke. Her eyes cleared. She looked smaller in the bed, not because she had shrunk, but because the fight that had kept her clenched had loosened. 15 minutes, Dr. Villanueva warned when he wheeled her into the pediatric ward. "Both are weak." Sebastian lay pale under thin light. He looked older at 2 months than he had any right to. When Esperanza whispered his name, his eyelids fluttered. He stared for a long second, uncertain. Then he made a soft sound like the memory of a laugh and cried without despair. "Can I try?" she asked the doctor, fingers shaking near the bottle. He hesitated, then nodded. Slowly? She lifted Sebastian and felt how light he was. "Despacio, mi amor," she murmured, the Spanish slipping out the way a prayer slips out when the heart refuses translation. He latched to the bottle like he had latched to her, tentative at first, then with a little more confidence. Between swallows, he watched her face as if to be sure it wouldn't vanish. Raphael stood in the doorway, and something in him that had been locked since the day Valentina died cracked and let light in. Later, in the quiet of a recovery room, he said, "I know I don't deserve to ask this, but I have to say it anyway. I am sorry." "Not now," she said flatly, and not because she enjoyed denying him, because she owed her words to the child in her arms first. She hummed something small and old, and Sebastian slept in a way that looked like healing. "Will you come back with us?" he asked finally. "I'll come back for him," she said. "If you humiliate me again, if you throw me out because someone whispers in your ear, I will disappear with this child, and you won't see us again." He swallowed. "Understood." "You'll have to earn my trust from zero," she said. "I know," he answered. "I want to." They went home when the doctor said they could, with antibiotics for Esperanza and a new schedule for Sebastian. The mansion looked different to her now. The shine was the same, the proportions absurd, but the rooms felt less like a trap and more like a thing she could learn to cross without flinching. At the door, Carmen cried and hugged her. "Nina," she said, pressing a hand to her cheek, "you're thinner, but your eyes are stronger." Raphael showed Esperanza to the guest room, larger with a private bath, and she looked at him over the armful of blankets he'd bought. "I didn't come back to be a princess," she said. "I came back for Sebastian." He backed away from good intentions. "Of course," he said. "Your old room, then." Days became a rhythm of small mercies. Esperanza fed the baby and watched for signs: wet diapers that meant hydration, cheeks slowly pinking, eyes that didn't go dull. Raphael learned to bathe his son without panic, learned the difference between the cry that meant hunger and the one that meant tired and the one that meant please don't leave the room yet. He learned that bedtime wasn't a battle to be won, but a truce to be honored. With Raphael, Esperanza spoke in careful, small doses. "Good morning." He slept well. "The bottle is warm enough now." Words like stones across a river, just enough to cross without falling in. "Give him time," Carmen told Raphael when she found him staring at the closed kitchen door, hoping for conversation and too afraid to knock. "You cannot fix what you broke with grand gestures. You fix it with repetition." He tried. He hired a private pediatrician. "We don't need that," Esperanza said coolly. "The public hospital saved me when you threw me out." He swallowed the argument that money could smooth things. He learned to say, "You're right," and mean it. News traveled faster on screens than watered-down gutters after rain. Patricia called. "I heard she's back," she said. "Are you sure that's wise?" "Camila lied," Raphael said. "Esperanza did nothing wrong. She saved him." A pause. Patricia's voice dipped into something almost human. "If you say so." That night, Raphael watched Esperanza hum to Sebastian and thought, "I can live with the neighborhood's disdain. I cannot live with the empty space she leaves behind." He posted a confession on Facebook not to harvest sympathy, but to nail his story to the front door before anyone else tried to write it for him. 3 months ago, I fired my employee Esperanza Morales for believing lies, he typed. She had lost her baby and still produced milk. When my son was in distress, she fed him and saved his life. Some told me she had sinister intentions. I believed them. I fired her without a reference, knowing she had no one. She lived on the street and nearly died. Meanwhile, my son withered in the hospital. I later discovered the nanny had lied out of jealousy and was selling my child's medicines. I found Esperanza under a bridge. The moment she held my son, he smiled. He wrote, "Esperanza is a hero. I nearly killed my child by listening to gossip. If you meet her, treat her with the respect she deserves." The post exploded. Praise rolled in waves. So did ugliness. A local TV station called. "Will you and Ms. Morales share your story?" the producer asked. "Only if she wants to," Raphael said. "Why?" Esperanza asked when he told her. "Why do I have to explain my humanity on television?" "You don't," he said. "But if you want to, it might protect you. It might help someone like us. Someone on the edge and someone blind to their own cruelty." She considered. "I'll speak for myself," she said. "Not for you." On camera, Esperanza did not ornament her truth. "I did what anyone should do," she said. "I saw a child suffering, and I helped him." "How did it feel to be accused?" the host asked. "Like being pushed out of your own life and told you deserve it," she said. "Like being hungry and shamed for eating bread." "And living on the street?" "Hard," she said softly. "But I met people who kept my soul from spoiling. Have you forgiven Mr. Mendoza?" "Forgiveness is work," she said. "Sometimes I can carry it 10 steps. Sometimes I have to set it down." "Are you two a couple?" the host asked with a candy-sweet smile. "No," Esperanza said quickly. "We are partners in raising Sebastian. That's enough. More than enough." Raphael swallowed whatever complicated thing tilted in his chest at that answer, and smiled because he was proud of her for owning her story. Camila watched the interview at home and set her phone down for long enough to feel something like regret. Then she picked it up again and wrote a post to justify herself. The comments were ruthless. She deleted her profile and learned the shape of a quieter life, the kind that didn't allow for shortcuts. Rumors didn't quit because the TV station liked Esperanza's face. Rodrigo, the ex-husband, who had blamed her for the doctor's mistake, called. You don't know who she really is, he said slickly. She used drugs when she was pregnant. That's why the baby died. Raphael's hand tightened on the phone. You're lying. I have medical proof, Rodrigo said. I'll show you for a price. Raphael hung up, stayed angry for half an hour, then found a shameful question bubbling up. What if? He approached Esperanza that night, words souring his mouth. Rodrigo called me, he said. He said, that I used drugs? She finished for him, and heat climbed her neck. Do you believe him? No, he said, then flinched. I don't know. Then ask me, she said, eyes bright and cold. Look at me and ask me like a man. How did your baby die? He asked, and he felt like he'd just put a key into a locked door and found out he didn't deserve to enter. The doctor waited too long to perform the cesarean, she said, voice steady now that anger had burned off the tremor. It's in the report. Rodrigo lies because it's useful and because it keeps him from seeing his own failure. I'm sorry, Raphael said, and he meant it like a person means it when the ground stops pretending it will hold him. I won't listen again. Decide, she said, a wall and a road in the same breath. You either trust me or you don't. I won't survive in a house that lives in the middle. I trust you, he said, and for once the words felt like bricks laid in a foundation. The world adjusted around that choice and didn't fall apart. Months passed. Sebastian grew into a round-cheeked, curious little boy who called Esperanza Mama one day without thinking about it, because that's what she was. Raphael felt something like sunlight when he heard it. Not because he had been erased, but because the space between them had finally been named, 3 people making a shape. He came home earlier. He learned to change diapers in the dark. He learned that baths could be adventures and that stories at night could be lullabies with plots. Let me put him down, he told Esperanza one night. And when she watched him from the doorway, reading clumsy lines about bears and soup and falling asleep in a bowl, she almost smiled. Thank you for letting me be his mother, she said once in the kitchen over the sound of a spoon tapping a bowl. Thank you for teaching me how to be his father, he replied, and it was the simplest they had ever spoken to each other. One morning, Esperanza looked at Raphael with a kind of resolve that made the air sharpen. I want to adopt him legally, she said. If something happens to you, I need to protect him. If you change your mind again, I need to still be his mother on paper. You already are, Raphael said, and then he heard his own words and nodded. But you're right, paper matters to the world. Let's do it. The process was 3 months of questions. What is your relationship? The social worker asked, pen ready to label them in a way the system could understand. We are partners in raising him, Esperanza answered. What happens if Mr. Mendoza marries? The woman pressed. She remains Sebastian's mother, Raphael said, sure in a way he had not been sure of anything since the day he'd said, I do. The judge was an old man whose face wore kindness like an old coat, comfortable, not flashy. Ms. Morales, are you prepared to take on the legal responsibility of motherhood? He asked. I have been doing it, she said. Now I want him to be safe even on paper. And Mr. Mendoza, are you ready to share custody permanently? Yes, he said. She is the mother he was meant to have. They signed papers. They walked out with a slim folder that some people would call the beginning of a life. Esperanza cried in the hallway. Not dainty tears, but the kind that let a person's whole body confess its relief. You are my son, she told Sebastian, in the heart, in the world, in the law. On an ordinary Sunday, the kind of day that should mean nothing but ended up meaning everything, Raphael woke to the sound of small feet and the words, Mama Ball. He found Esperanza on the floor with Sebastian, both laughing. Papa! The boy yelled when Raphael appeared, and he ran all wobble and joy into his arms. They played until the sun made shapes on the carpet. Are you happy? Raphael asked carefully, the way you touch a bruise to see if it still hurts. I am happy with him, she said without flinching. Very. And with me, he asked, and in the pause he heard his own breath fall. You became a better man, she said after a moment. More present, more human. Does that mean you forgave me? It means I am learning how, she said. Forgiveness is not a switch. It's a path. Some days I walk faster, some days I sit and rest, but I haven't turned back. Could we ever be more than this? He asked. More than co-parents? Maybe, she said. Maybe not. We already have a family that works. Let's not rush to paint over something good with something we don't fully understand. He nodded. Slow, he said. Slow, she agreed. And when he offered her his hand to stand, she took it. From the bus window that passed every morning at 8 and every evening at 5, Camilla sometimes saw them in the kitchen like a postcard. A woman, a man, a child, breakfast between laughter. She looked away and told herself the stories about fate and punishment and how she was not the villain, but the stories sagged in the middle. Lies are heavy to carry alone. Rodrigo called a few more times with new versions of old lies. Rafael didn't answer. Patricia and her friends learned to whisper with caution. Some neighbors still pointed and theorized and made the tragedy of another household into their daily entertainment. There is always an audience for misery when it can be kept at arm's length. Inside the house, peace lived. Not perfection, not the frozen smile of a family portrait, but the kind of peace that lets a person breathe without glancing over their shoulder. They moved around each other in the kitchen, like dancers who had learned each other's steps, not from practice but from need. They were three people carrying what the world had dropped on them, and somehow making it into something that looked like love. Sebastian grew. He stacked blocks, then knocked them down, and never cried about the ruin. He slept with one hand curled around Esperanza's hair, and the other around the ear of a stuffed bear that had cost too much. He said Mama when he needed comfort, and Papa when he needed help opening something. He learned that he could say both in the same minute, and no one would correct him. Rafael learned to say, I was wrong, and not as an apology full of flowers and show, but as a daily liturgy. Esperanza learned to say, I need help, and not flinch because the words sounded like weakness. Carmen learned to tell people who came into her kitchen with gossip that it didn't bake well in her oven. Esteban came by once to get a warm meal and to see the woman whose life he had helped extend. He sat at the table like he belonged, because he did. If you're still listening, ask yourself this. When you hear a cry that keeps cutting the air, what part of you wakes up? The part that looks around to see who else will act? Or the part that stands and moves because you can't do anything else? It took nearly losing everything for Rafael to understand the simplest of truths. The opinion of people who don't love you is wind. The hand of the person who held your child through the worst night of his life is anchor. Was it fair that Esperanza was thrown out? No. Was it human? Yes. But to be human is not an excuse to stay cruel. It is an invitation to change. So tell me, if this were your house, your child, your mistake, what would you have done? And if you were Esperanza, what would you have risked?